Hello everybody and welcome to another video. Today is Tuesday the 12th and that means today the new Guild Wars 2 patch has just gone live. This is the Dragon's Reach Part 2 update for the Living World. I didn't actually do a video on the trailer for this one. Honestly, I didn't see that much to talk about, aside from obvious jokes that the Pale Tree had forgotten to pay her electric bills. But having played the patch now, gone through all of the story, the mechanics stuff side of it, I wanted to talk to you guys about it, explain what's going on. There will be two videos. This one, which is completely spoiler-free and features footage of the new area of the map in the background, and a second, probably much lengthier one, where we talk about everything that happened in the story. I would say, in terms of the plot, this is probably the best plot patch we've had so far. It's at the very least on par with the patch where we had the Eternal Alchemy stuff, and so there's a fair amount to talk about, as you can imagine. But here, let's just talk about the quality of the mechanical stuff, what the new area of the map's like, changes the Black Lion store, the game in general, and I guess I'll just start with the description from the patch notes, which reads, as Timey works to save waypoints and world leaders converge on the Grove for the historic summit with the Pale Tree, the shadow of Morgemoth looms over all. Will Timey's waypoint device work? Will world leaders work together to face the growing dragon threat, or will they all be reminded that no one is safe from the Dragon's Reach? I find it really funny this is Dragon's Reach Part 1 and 2. I honestly think if it had just been Dragon's Reach, if this wasn't cut in half, it would have been the most immense, awesome patch that they've put out to date. What we saw last update was fairly interesting, had a really cool cliffhanger, that stuff with Ritlock disappearing into the mists, and the start of this scavenger hunt for a new back piece, but then what was there beyond that? Not too much, right? It was mostly us replaying old events and some changes to the Iron Marches. If all of this stuff too, the update to more areas in Drytop and all the additional story was here as well, including this one's cliffhanger, it would have been brilliant. But let's talk about what they did begin last week, which was the scavenger hunt, and this was the idea of building this back piece. Those of you who got your back piece last week will have noticed that you got another seed basically that said, do it again but slightly different this time and you'll get an even better back piece. Try it again. You can now expand on that scavenger hunt. There will be footage in the background right now of what the new back piece looks like. Unfortunately, on stage where I have no trading post or any of the amenities I would on live, I haven't been able to create one of these for myself and see the entire process, just like last week really. But the flavor text certainly does make it sound like this thing is beginning to love you. It looks like we're growing a pale tree. It's certainly an aesthetic on a back piece I don't think they've really done that much before, so I'm quite appreciative of it, but I don't really know how difficult it will be to get this patch. I do know that as you complete the story steps, you get these weird miscellaneous items like a really powerful Foxfire cluster, for example, that suggests the crafting of this new better version is going to be very much in line with what we saw last patch. I also, someone brought this to my attention, I find it quite curious that they made it cost 3 different disciplines to create one of these things, not just 2, 3 different disciplines, and you may say, oh, this is, they're just trying to include many different disciplines in the game, but it could also be that perhaps not by any small coincidence, you can now buy on the gem store this ability to have 3 disciplines all at once. Oh, how convenient that has just suddenly worked out. So, because this patch has not only more story, but also another area to Drytop, that means there's a little bit more in the achievements for this patch. Yes, you've got the achievements for replaying content, but because there's a new area, you also have stuff like lost coins to go after. Nothing super out of the ordinary, though. And the new area of the map, let's just get down to it, is actually probably a bit smaller than maybe some of you were expecting. I actually wasn't expecting any update to the map this patch, so I'm kind of happy it's there. But for reference, there are only 12 lost coins in this area as opposed to the much greater numbers we had in some of the other areas. That said, it does look pretty cool. It comes with some new assets. For example, there's a totally new enemy type in this patch. These giant beetles. They're kind of the opposite of some of these Mordrum we've been fighting who are vulnerable from behind. The beetles are heavily armored. They remind me an awful lot of the beetles in Alona from the first game. But these guys will not take damage unless they are directly facing you. Like, they're vulnerable areas. They're squishy little face in front. This means, typically, and you'll see it in the footage in the background, you don't have to change the way you play against beetles that much. The AI will just aggro to you, and then what do you know? They're facing you, so you can easily just shoot them down. But I find it to be a fun little twist. I like that if they are going to continue adding new enemies to Guild Wars 2, they're adding these cool variants on their mechanics, and even if they're not mind-bogglingly difficult things to defeat, which absolutely most enemies shouldn't be, at least there are these little twist things that we're playing into, and it makes it kind of fun. So what I did in the footage back there was some guy was trying to make beetle soup, I believe, so I had to kill a bunch of them. Now, there are a fair few extra events in the new area of the map, and this also means you can now push the favor of the Zephyrite to tier 6, not just tier 5. As far as I could see, this doesn't actually come with any new wares for them. I could be mistaken, but there are obviously further discounts, deeper discounts you can go for if you manage to push it all the way up to tier 6. One thing I'm kind of curious about is whether when they do this, they expand the map cap on the amount of players that can be in Dry Top. I'm going to guess no. I think what they're doing is kind of clever. They want people to be able to complete a lot of events and basically train, but they don't want it to be one giant Zerg. They want it to split a lot, right? And every time they expand Dry Top and add more events that people have to complete in a shorter space of time, the more splitting is encouraged. So you have a lot of activity in the map, but not in one giant karma train like we've seen with previous trains in Guild Wars 2. Be interesting to see how this goes. You already see a fair bit of splitting when people are going for tier 5s. Going for tier 6s, we could see even more and over a bigger landscape. I like it. In fact, I think it's worked so well, I wouldn't be surprised when they add another map, like after we leave Dry Top, we go to the Magus Stones or whatever. In other maps, they could implement very similar mechanics just to encourage that healthy spread of activity through all these areas. Even though the first Dry Top area was like months ago now when it first came out, there's still tons of people there because it's linked in really nicely. So anyway, I haven't seen how many new events that are there. I don't know whether there's anything akin to the legendary sand giant that was added last patch that gives you a daily reward too, but let's be honest, not many people even kill that giant because he's got just too damn much health. The new area does come with a couple of extra vistas, I believe 2 more skill points too, and more Zephyrite Rex. In terms of NPCs, you start by finding a very small outpost straight away where you can communicate with some people. Those members of the Dermond Priory are still progressing further into the map, and you'll see me having a chat with them as I always do. And it's a fairly linear area, but it does seem to have an end at a certain place where it's like, okay, cool, here's the next gate. There'll be another update to Dry Top eventually that pushes us even further, or maybe even moves us into the next map. I was a little bit disappointed this patch to see that, despite all the complaints in the community, ArenaNet still seem very reluctant to make a map that's not a damn rectangle. Like, it just looks so unrealistic and unnatural to me when you open your world map and you see all the different explorable areas and just these perfectly sized rectangles all over the place. When you unlock this new area in Dry Top, you realise, oh yeah, it's just as much a conventional shaped map as anywhere else is in Guild Wars 2, but I guess we should consider that a minor thing. The other thing I quite liked that they did with the new area was it branches near the Vine Bridge we had in the previous patch, right? And a lot of people speculated this is where the new area would adjoin on. It's actually quite clever. One of the main criticisms that Dry Top has had is that it feels too linear to people. I'm personally not one of these people. I don't like that 99% of the Guild Wars 2 maps cover these vast distances, but you can like make a beeline and ignore everything and just run straight across. I don't like the huge open fields. Sure, in moderation, they're quite nice. You know, Queensdale, I think, has done quite well, but when the entire game, and look at the way Ore works, right? These huge maps, but you just can run in straight lines, there's no linearity. I just feel like there's been too much freedom in Guild Wars 2. And Dry Top's been very different to that, hasn't it? It's been very linear. It forces you to go on these very specific routes. Look at as you're headed to the Oasis, for example, you have to go through the cave in Scarlet's house, you have to go up that staircase there, you have to walk along these narrow gullies, and there's not so much option, there's not so much in the way of exploration, I guess, for some people, particularly those who don't care about lost coins and the extra achievements and stuff, who frankly are probably just blitzing their way through the content a little bit too quickly anyway. But that has been a criticism, and I think they're kind of recognizing that, because now if you look at the way that the map is laid out with this new area 2, you have that linearity, but then you get to a point where it's like, okay, if I go to the right up this Vine Bridge, I go in a completely different direction than if I follow it to the left and end up going to the Leyline Hub Cave and all that stuff over there. I think that was smart. If they had just made the new map adjoin onto the end of the previous, so you have to basically run like this snake all the way along the board, that would have been rubbish. But now you do get these kind of significant crossroads where you're like, okay, if I go that way, I'm going to end up somewhere totally different than if I end up this way. Anyway, enough about the new map. I'll tell you guys how ArenaNet described their rewards. Really, it is just that back piece and your standard stuff with achievements. They say players who completed their mysterious vine and received a cultivated seed may now create exotic and ascended back items and a plant that feeds on bloodstone dust. Now, that is an interesting line, isn't it? But I don't have one of these things. I don't know how much bloodstone dust. Obviously, Guild Wars 2 has needed a sink for bloodstone dust for a long time. How does this work? Are people going to want to wear a back piece that's just sucking bloodstone dust from their inventory all the time? Is that really the mechanic here? I fail to see it. Maybe it's something a bit more interesting where the longer you're wearing it, it absorbs bloodstone dust and eventually it changes its appearance cosmetically. I'm only speculating. I don't have the damn thing. I guess we'll know before the end of the day, though. A pretty big thing here for those of you who have been opening a lot of Black Lion chests hoping for the Monkey King tonic. The Monkey King tonic and the new miniature of the Monkey King have now got a chance of dropping from new bosses throughout Dry Top. So this will be content in the new area as well as previous areas, I would hazard, and this is now your optional way, your alternative way of getting it. I think some people are going to be bitter about this because they're going to say, wow, they made an exclusive drop from the Black Lion chest. I spent a bunch of money, I didn't get it in the end, and now they're just releasing it here. Like, they can do no right here, you know? They could just be saying, maybe this shouldn't be a Black Lion chest exclusive thing, let's add it somewhere else. But people aren't going to buy that as an excuse. I'm happy that there's more loot though. I think Dry Top's had great loot. I spent a long time last patch running around spending tons of lockpicks, and opening those chests has actually been genuinely really fun. And so even more interesting loot, especially if these things stay rare, even though now they will drop, they should stay rare. That could be cool. I know a lot of people do like the Monkey King tonic at least. I was doing some tonic glitching and stuff the other day with some guildies where we were seeing what tonics look like while they were crippled, and it turns out the Monkey King just doesn't have an animation at all for being crippled. He just turns invisible, which is quite funny. Anyway, they say that you can now earn higher discounts from Zephyrite merchants, as I've explained, and there is a new reward track in PvP, the Arid region. Wow, so I had been saying very recently, whatever happened to this? Someone asked me the question and reminded me. They said when they overhauled the way PvP rewards were going to work, that with Living World updates, there were going to be new update tracks for PvPers too, so it would be relevant for them. And then they just never did it. Well, this patch, finally they have. There is a new region that you can check out, the Arid region. This is going to give you loot similar to what you'd find in Dry Top, like dusty bags of goods and those kinds of champ boxes and so forth. I'm sure most PvPers won't care that much, but hey, it's something new to go for. The Black Lion weapons have changed this patch to Chaos weapons. Hopefully I'll have some footage in the background for you guys. And yes, when I say Chaos skins, I literally mean like the Chaos Axe from Gw2. The Chaos Axe is there, it's huge, it's amazing. I'll probably be getting it for myself. The thing is, what was so cool about them before, well, in my opinion, was that you used to be able to dye weapons, and the Chaos weapons, when you dyed them, they would come out like ridiculously different colors than you would expect, because they were chaotic. You can't do that here, but still, the Chaos Axe, I'm gonna be getting me one of those. A lot of people have got a lot of tickets on them right now. There's been so many threads of people saying, hey, I opened 100 plus Black Lion chests and so forth. So I doubt these things will be too expensive no matter how cool they end up looking. But yeah, another set of those are there. The price of leyline weapons has now been changed therefore to 5 tickets. And a couple of other things, like there's a new toy. There are utility primers now. So the metabolic primer, if you guys don't know what that was, it's something you can get on the gem store. You double click it, it lasts for 24 hours, and then whatever food you eat has that duration too. I don't believe, even on the most expensive foods in all of Guild Wars 2, it's actually profitable to buy them. But if you get them from, say, a Black Lion chest, they're worthwhile using. Well, there's now one for utilities too, so you can use that for potions, anything along those lines. And that's about it, guys. As I say, this one's going to be a bit shorter. Story stuff is phenomenal. I'll say mechanically about the story this patch. I think ArenaNet are finally starting to get to grips with how boss fights should work. That said, on my awful character on the stage client that I'm just so bad at, and I should just pack it in and play another class, like an easier class. I should run around as an Necro or something just so I can face roll stuff. I found them much more difficult than I'm sure I will on live, but you know, the bosses have been interesting, and it's all supported by a stronger story too this week. So anyway, that'll be in the other video. Thanks very much for watching, guys. Let me know whether you enjoyed the patch, and I guess I'll see you next time. Have a good one.